Good morning, everybody. My name's Brett Janelle, and I'll be your host today. And today's topic is the truth about the aging brain. And many of you last year may know we did a seminar that was titled The Truth About Dementia, Being Avoidable and Reversible. And we had over 300 attendees at that seminar. That was May of last year. And we had a number of doctors from the Sanford Center for Aging at UNR and also an MD who specialized in dementia. And they talked extensively and educated us about things like dementia warning signs, different types of dementia, how our behavior may increase or decrease the likelihood of us getting dementia, and also the impacts of dementia and some techniques and tools and resources about how we can perhaps slow down the effects of dementia and also best deal and support and help family members. So we recorded that last year, and everyone will receive an email tomorrow morning, and we'll include the recording of that seminar for those who weren't able to attend. And if you weren't able to attend and you would like to watch it, of course you can. And I'm just curious, I'm just wondering if people could raise their hands. If you're on a computer device, there should be a little raise hand icon. And if you're on a phone, *9. I'm just curious to know how many people, if we could raise our hands, were actually at that seminar of last year. Okay, I see a few hands going up. And actually, what I might just quickly do is I might just put up a poll here. So let me just do this. So hopefully you should have a poll on your screen. I'd actually like to capture this just so we have a better feeling. So you should see a little poll on your screen that says, did you attend The Truth About Dementia Being Avoidable and Reversible last year? And if you did, just click yes. And if you didn't, click no. And either answer obviously is fine, and I'll share those results with you in just a moment. So I see, we've got about 40% of people did, 60% who didn't. So I'll just leave that up for a moment while everyone has a chance to do that. And sorry, I'm just moving windows around on my computer here so I have everything I need in front of me. So let me just share the results. Thank you for everyone who was able to respond. And as you can see, about 40% were at that seminar last year, so that's fantastic, and about 60% we're not there. So again, if you'd like to watch the recording of that, it was super informational. We'll have that out to you tomorrow. But today we'd like to go in a little bit of a different direction with the truth about the aging brain. And all of us obviously have concerns as we age, and we're all aging, unfortunately. Maybe we're more aware of it sometimes physically than mentally, but our brain does age just as our body does. And we all have concerns about, what does the future look like as perhaps we deal with memory loss, and it's not inevitable, but it will affect some people. And there's lots of emotions and complex questions surrounding that, both in terms of short-term plans and making long-term plans. And I'm sure that's why many of you are on this call today. And one of the biggest questions Annette and I get in our business that we come across, because we're in real estate and we help people downsize, the question tends to be is, how long can I or should I remain living in my home? And there is no right or wrong answer, but we get that a lot. So we thought in today's topic on the aging brain, we'd dive down deeper and bring in some experts to talk more about that, because we know lots of couples struggle to agree on whether to stay and age in place or to move together. And just, as we said, it's a really complex topic and lots of decisions to be made, and obviously plans need to be put in place. So I have some great experts with us today who are going to help us answer some questions around that, and I'd like to introduce them if I can get my slide to come up. So I'd like to start off by having each of our panelists introduce themselves, and maybe if I could start with you, Nancy. Could you introduce who you are, why you might be on today's call, and a little bit about your background?
Good morning, Brett and Annette, and I'm excited to be here with you today. My name is Nancy Shire-Anselmo. I'm a professional gerontologist, and I live in Sacramento, California. But today I'm calling in from Texas. I am a professor of gerontology at Sacramento State University for 20 years. And I'm a consultant with a firm that I'm a founder of called Alzheimer's Care Associates. And we're consultants that help set up memory support communities. We are locally setting up and have written the program, and we'll be doing quality assurance for the Clearwater at Ranchero program there in Reno. And I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit research study, which is now a program called the Connected Horse, that we're doing there in Minden, Nevada, starting in September 19th or 18th, pardon me, for people living with dementia and their care partners. So it's an exploratory nonprofit program that we have research behind, that we can help people in the early stages of dementia. So thanks for having me today.
No, our absolute pleasure, Nancy. And you mentioned Clearwater. For those who aren't aware, can you just briefly say what that is?
Yes, Clearwater at Ranchera is an assisted living and independent living and memory support community. And they will be opening around the 1st of December in your community in Reno.
Okay, wonderful. That's just over by Revel Ranchera, the independent living community, correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. People maybe have driven down Kitski and they can see that beautiful new building going up in front of Revel. So yeah, that'll be the assisted living memory care. So another great addition to our community. Let me jump over to you, Ryan. Why are you here today and what company are you with?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ryan Hart. I'm the owner of Amada Senior Care. We are a non-medical home care business based here in Reno. We've been in business about 4 years. We take care of a lot of folks that have dementia, Alzheimer's, or a mixture thereof. And yeah, we just we provide the caregivers in the home so that people don't have to move to facilities or memory care units or even assisted living until it's time. So that's why I'm here today.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. And Annette.
Hi, I'm Annette Janelle, and I'm with the Janelle Group. We focus our business on helping people downsize, and oftentimes we do have people that are dealing with memory issues and those aspects. We've been doing it for about over 10 years. And then also I have a master's in psychology and behavior analysis.
Great. Well, a big welcome to our panelists on behalf of all of our attendees. And I'm just looking, we have over 60 people on the call, which usually translates to close to 100, given there's, couples watching, sharing a screen and so forth. So great attendance. Thank you for everyone for being here. And so I'd like to jump in and start with you if I can, Nancy. Is it inevitable that we're all going to have declining cognitive abilities as we age? Is that a given or?
No, it's inevitable that we are going to age. However, we may not have an aging brain if some of us can take care of ourselves better than others. We found that it's 1/3 genetics and 2/3 lifestyle. So I like to bet on the side of lifestyle, as you had in your last program. We know as people are living longer, the highest risk factor is age of people over age 85. And so that's why we're seeing a lot more of dementia. And then also the risk factors related to their health with hypertension, diabetes, obesity, excessive alcohol use, other things that we see as practitioners in the field that some folks might get a little bit earlier than others. So it's not inevitable. We can fight it. And I think that's really exciting.
Most definitely. So when you say lifestyle, and we talked a lot about that in May of last year, and people can certainly watch that, but just for those who weren't able to attend that seminar, just briefly, what do you mean by lifestyle?
Well, we know that exercise, that dirty word of exercise, the most important thing, keeping your brain active, the brain and blood barrier and keeping your brain going is important with exercise. We know that something called BDNF is generated in the hippocampus of the brain every time someone goes out for a rigorous walk. Really get your blood pressure up, not just a stroll, but exercise is the best way to slow down the aging process and look towards prevention. The Alzheimer's Association doesn't necessarily say prevention. There's tips and tools that you can do. We never know because everyone's genetic factors are different. But that's
obviously exercise is not going to hurt us though.
No, it's going to help a lot. And we know a lot more about diet and nutrition and sleep and and stress. All of these things are factors that really start to have cascading events as we age, that they build up and cause effects in the entire body, including the brain.
And then when we were speaking, Nancy, you mentioned not only physical exercise, but also mental exercise. So with the pandemic, it's kind of a bit of an issue at the moment. People are binge watching, Netflix from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm sure no one on this call is doing that, but that's probably not helping our brain either.
Well, I guess everything in moderation, Brad, is the way to think about it, but keeping your brain active, learning something new, learning a language, combining exercise and cognitive work is really important and is like double whammy for you. And learning, keeping your brain active and fresh, just like our muscles. Our muscles will start to atrophy if we don't use them. It's the same thing with the brain.
And then Alzheimer's dementia is one of the same. Is dementia an umbrella for many types of?
Yes, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term for all different types of dementia. Alzheimer's being the most common type at 60%, but you can have a combination of vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, or Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. So there are many, many different kinds. The last time I heard that there was like 96 different types of dementia. It grows every day. For instance, frontal temporal dementia, we only had one type a few years ago. Now we have 3.
Thank you. And again, on the call that we did last year, we went into that in a lot more detail. So great. So, so Nancy, if anyone of the attendees have a loved one and appear to be experiencing some form of reduced, perhaps brain function, is this something we should bring up with our primary care physician? And if so, are there advantages in doing that? And are there perhaps any disadvantages I'm concerned about where I'm at cognitively?
Yes, it's a definite advantage to know in advance so you can use that prevention and lifestyle approach to really stay healthy and keep that brain aging at a good pace. And now Medicare does do a cognitive screen every year at the age of 65 for individuals, so that they're starting to track that thanks to the Alzheimer's Association. So getting the diagnosis early is, even though it's frightening, it's important because there are things you can do to help slow the progression. That's one of the reasons we started the Connected Horse program as well. We found that people really activate their brain by getting out in nature, doing something new, learning something new, and staying really preventative and focused on a proactive approach to aging.
So did you say to me by being proactive, we could potentially help even slow it down and better cope, as opposed to burying our head in the sand and pretending there's nothing?
Exactly, Brett. So we want to slow down the process. And if we could just slow down this process by 5 years, we could cut the incidence in half, because the average age is 85 and over when people are diagnosed. And if they know even 5 years earlier, we could really slow down that progression and have healthier longevity for individuals and cut the incidence in half, since we may not live to be 100.
And are there any disadvantages to being diagnosed, to knowing that perhaps our brain is not what it used to be?
Sure. I mean, the disadvantage is that people become depressed and people say, well, what's the use? I have something going on in my brain, and they don't fight it. So I think what we'd like to see in the field of aging and longevity is that people will fight this process and really become proactive and take care of their own health as they age. And when you find out you may have some cognitive issues such as mild cognitive impairment, MCI, which is sometimes a precursor to dementia, but sometimes it can plateau out. So people have that option to really fight it and have a healthy lifestyle, change their way of living, and slow down that process for healthier longevity and well-being.
Thanks, Nancy. And so Ryan, let me just jump across to you, because I know when we're all talking earlier, getting ready for this call, you had mentioned something about advantages and disadvantages from your perspective. Can you remind me of what they were? You made some good points.
Yeah, and I echo all of Nancy's comments and whatnot. The only disadvantage that I can see with getting a diagnosis is if you're trying to go for some sort of life insurance or long-term care insurance, typically the wheelhouse is 55 to 65. But if there is an early diagnosis, then that can affect premiums and stuff. So that's the only disadvantage I see, is that it can really affect those premiums if you're going for a life or a long-term care insurance policy. Most of the time, when you're 65 and over, you're pretty well aged out of either one anyway. So it's kind of a non-issue there. But if you have some really early onset of dementia, then there can be a disadvantage with any type of insurance.
Did everyone see Annette's form of communication? And thank you, Ryan, with me. She held up a sign saying change screen. Get rid of the slides so everybody can see the speakers. So let me just do that. Thank you, Annette. Is that better? Hopefully that's better for everyone attending. The slide gone. So from what you were just saying, Ryan, better off to do that before getting diagnosed if you have some concerns and there might be insurance or something that's applicable to you. Approaching that first before getting a diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean that's about the only disadvantage I can see with having a diagnosis. I agree with Nancy. It's always better to know early, so you can do things to try to mitigate it a little bit.
Thanks. Annette, did you have anything you wanted to add before I jump to our next question?
Well, I just want to follow up is knowing in advance, you can plan a lot better. And we're all about planning well in advance just for what the what ifs are. So maybe you don't need the help now, but planning for the future. And especially when it comes to the aging brain, you're better able to make decisions earlier on than waiting till it's later and you're further along.
That's a great point, yeah, because we see couples struggle when it's got too far because then one of the parties, is not able to make decisions as well as they would have, in the very early stages. Yeah, so great point. So one of the biggest concerns that we
Nancy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so somehow we got disconnected.
Oh yeah, okay.
We're back on now.
I was hoping that wasn't just me.
No, it wasn't just you.
I needed a bathroom break. No, no, it's technology. Great when it's working, but so sorry. Back to you, Nancy. That little dropout.
Sorry, it froze.
When should family members start looking at or planning whether or not to continue staying at home where they are, or potentially making a move somewhere else, whatever that might look like?
Well, that's a very individual choice, Brett. I think that many families choose when it's just too hard to handle at home, or they have other conflicts, like now, having kids homeschooled or caring for an aging parent on top of keeping their job via Zoom or whatever. I think that everyone has a different journey in that way, but usually families will start to seek assisted living services and and Ryan's services, obviously, when they just can't handle it anymore at home, or it's much too difficult, or the person isn't having a good time at home. Perhaps something is aggravating them and they want to leave all the time. Sometimes we see it when folks are incontinent. It's very difficult to handle that stress as well. So again, it's very individual choice, and every family kind of knows when it's time, and they look for the right place that has focus on the person themselves and the resident. That's the most important thing, that they really individualize care for them just like that person would do. We feel in the senior housing world, you're entrusting your loved one to us. We really take that seriously. It's very important that people they know them well and they care for them in partnership with the family.
Wonderful. So let me jump to you, Annette, because I know from a financial perspective, we always try to have people remain in their home as long as possible, because financially, and usually a lot of it is about a financial decision, it's less expensive typically being in your home than moving. What would you say to that? And then I'll jump to Ryan, who works with people in their home.
I actually agree with Nancy. It's really individual depending on the people, and financially, we've had people that it can be overwhelming caring for a loved one and as well as caring for a large home. So they may choose to downsize just to be able to keep more control over everything. But it's really individual. It's really dependent upon finances for people. So we go over all kinds of different options that are available to help people make the best decision for themselves.
So let me thanks Annette, jump to you, Ryan. So you work with a lot of people in their home providing care services through your company. So what do you see? And obviously you're there to help people stay in their home as long as possible. When do you kind of see, a change, and maybe that's not the best thing based on, what Nancy said, circumstances changing? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so it boils down to family caregiver burnout, and then usually finances are the two major things I see. The number one burnout for caregiving is family members. They burn out quicker than people that are trained to do it. They've been living with someone 50, 60 years, and all of a sudden now they have to be their full-time caregiver. It gets really difficult. And then the second one is financial. That's the number one thing that makes people make those decisions. I just had a family that the wife, they've lived together, they've been married 60 something years, lived together that entire time, and she's getting really, her dementia is getting really bad, to the point where she's sneaking out and trying to drive the car in the middle of the night. And so they've had to make the decision, because they can't afford 24/7 care from us, to put her into memory care. And I fully supported that decision, because that's the right thing for the patient. So I agree with both Annette and Nancy that it's really individual. It's really kind of, what can we afford? How long is this going to last? And then, at the end of the day, is the person with dementia happy? Because, they oftentimes don't even know where they are. And, if you're trying to redirect them all the time and trying to take care of them all the time, it just becomes such a drain on everybody. That if they can be in, a locked, or at least a fairly stable memory care kind of environment, then, they're going to be just as happy as if they're at home. And the family just gets so much relief at that point too. So it's just really up to the family, and it's a full-on family decision at that point.
Thank you. So what would you say is there a difference between it being, a couple who are at home and one of them's dealing with, dementia, versus an individual? Are there advantages for an individual to be somewhere else other than isolated on their home? I'm sure maybe Nancy, you can talk to that about socialization. Is it different for an individual or a couple? And I know everyone's circumstances are different, but would you have any input there?
Because the brain, to keep the brain active, you need socialization. If all of us just came in and took a memory test today without talking to anyone, we would not do as well as if we actually were socializing, talking with our family. The socialization part is really important, and we're certainly seeing that now with COVID-19, that isolation causes what are called geriatric syndromes, and people are declining faster as they're less stimulated in their brain and their body. So I think that people that are living alone are not only at risk without Ryan's services, they really are, they might be declining faster because they have no stimulation for their cognitive functioning.
So for someone who is an individual at home and has dementia, what things can we do if we're wanting to stay in the home environment? We don't have the option of perhaps moving into one of our wonderful communities. What things are available to get that interaction? I guess one would be bringing your company in, Ryan, would be one option. But what other options are there to try to help with that?
Is this a question for me, Brett?
Whoever would like to take it, just jump in.
There's a lot of options out there. Adult daycare is a really good one. Places like the Continuum or More to Life, where you can take someone there for 8 to 10 hours a day. They can get the socialization, and then you can pick them up at the end of the workday, so to speak, so that the family member, the spouse, can get some respite. They can go do their shopping or whatever. Their loved ones in a very safe environment where they're socializing, they're getting fed, and making sure they're not trying to wander or do anything like that. They can even exercise them. They play games and stuff like that. That's a really good option. And we have a lot of people that use both of us. So they'll use us, 3 days a week, and then they'll take them to an adult daycare community for 2 days a week or something like that. So they're trying to get the most bang for their buck and Those places are a little less expensive too than something like our services. So that can be advantageous too if that's a route we want to go. We explore all those options with everybody when they're starting to really deal with pretty moderate to severe dementia with their loved one.
Thanks, Ryan. That's great tips. Nancy, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I think, again, socializing, doing brain activities, doing Zoom, joining support groups on Zoom, which all the Alzheimer's Association has, really reaching out and not being alone. And people in the early stages could do that. If someone's a little bit further along, they might have more challenging time getting started. But, and exercise, of course, I'm a big proponent of that people really get out and be social, get a dog, it makes you walk it, you know, whatever you can do to be active. The isolation issues are really distressing for older adults, and it does affect all of us, but it really affects you when you're an elder.
Thank you. And then just for the benefit of attendees, I didn't mention this at the moment because we have a lot of people who attend regularly, but if you have questions, on your screen, you should have a little box or an icon you can click on that says Q&A, questions and answers. And you're welcome to type in questions there, and I'll have our panelists respond to those. And then at roughly about 11 o'clock, we'll open it up to your questions. So if you have questions, I can unmute you and you can ask your questions directly. But if you're thinking of things now and you'd like to type them into the question and answers box, we'll answer each of those questions as well. So I know this is a little repetitive, but when is the right time to bring in help and what are the options? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are the spectrum of options there available either in the home or in a community that everyone should know about? If we could start with you, Nancy.
The right time is usually when the person isn't doing well in their home and they need to have assistance, and especially in their home, if the care partner is burnt out, is trying to keep their job, is really at the end of their rope. It really is important to look proactively and look for those choices with Ryan's services, earlier or adult day services, or what Annette does, because the earlier we plan and are proactive about it, the better decisions we'll make, and we will not be making decisions in duress or under an emergency situation, but really start planning on the future with that diagnosis so that you know when the time comes that you'll have those things in place, you found the right place and the right company that will support you, and be proactive. Again, I've seen too many families over my 25 years of doing this and that it make bad decisions under duress. And so we really like to think it's not a pleasant thought, but it's like planning, you know, for anything else, financial planning, what have you. You have to do it in advance.
Thanks, Nancy. And do you recall any of those bad decisions? What does a bad decision look like, and what does that then look like going forward?
Well, I was just talking to a family the other day that someone's caring for someone living with dementia, and the husband is, you know, really has his own health problems. He's driving himself and his wife to the hospital in the middle of the night because he wasn't feeling well, and he has glaucoma and he really shouldn't be driving. And then he had to go into the ER and leave his wife alone in the ER waiting room, and she has mid-stage dementia, and that's not a good situation. And so as much as my friends didn't want to hear that news, I said, you've really got to plan in advance for these things because something could have happened to your mom, your dad's health is not well, and it's too much stress on both of them.
Thank you. I think we can learn a lot from bad decisions. It's one thing to know what to do, but what are the ramifications if we, you know, don't plan and put things in place? I'm sure, Ryan, do you have, or Annette, do you want to add?
Actually, we've seen that as well, as far as the spouse being the caregiver and the health of the caregiver declining, or them getting physically hurt just trying to help their spouse. So it definitely is beneficial for the family as well as the spouse to plan ahead and know what options are available and to start taking advantage of those sooner rather than later.
Yeah, great point. We've definitely seen where it's the well spouse ends up worse off than the one who's suffering from dementia because of falls, hospitalization, and so forth. Yeah.
Actually, the research shows that the care partner wears out before the person living with dementia in, you know, 8 out of 10 times. So it really is important to plan in advance for that.
Wow. So 8 out of 10 times research shows that the care person ends up in a worse position than the, wow, it's amazing. Yeah, but understandable. And I'm sure, Ryan, you see that often.
Yeah, yeah, all the time, and it does happen the way that both of them say, where the the partner, the care partner, that the person taking care of the person with dementia, their health just decreases. I saw it with my own parents, my wife's parents, with Parkinsonian related dementia. They ended up having to move out, move away from each other, and getting divorced because it was just the health was declining so bad. The other option that's out there is a group home, and those can be really beneficial if you can find a good one that fits the needs, because they still get the socialization. They have 24/7 caregiving oversight, and they're not quite as expensive as some of the communities, especially memory care. So those can be a really good option too, and oftentimes they're locked too, so people can't get out without a code, and they limit visitors and all that stuff. So that can be another option out there as well. I forgot to mention that in the first go around, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, great. No, thank you, Ryan. So while we're on that, 2 questions. What does a group home look like? What does that environment look like? Is it an individual person, multiple people? And then do we have them here locally, Reno, Sparks, Carson City, and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's usually a single family residence, 3 to 4 bedroom house. They get a fire sprinkler system installed, and then they'll have a single caregiver that'll take care of between 4 to 6 residents. Some of them do 10. We don't have any around here, I think, that will take 10 residents. But the residents will just live in a respective bedroom. Sometimes they'll share a bedroom. And then they do the whole thing where the caregiver will cook meals for them. They make sure that they're fed. They're making sure that they're socializing, so you can socialize with 4 to 6 other people, and it's a safe environment. I never deter people from going to those types of places, because they can be significantly, sometimes we're talking half the cost of a community, and much less than a lot of hours of care for my type of business. So it can be a good option if you can find a good fit. There are a lot of really bad ones out there, I will tell you that, but yeah, there are a lot of options in Reno. There's probably 10 to 15 just in Reno, and then several 6 to 10 in Carson. And I know a lot of them. I refer to them all the time when people just simply can't afford us, or they need a lot of care. So they could be a good option. There are options. Some of them take Medicaid as well, which is a good option. So that can be another option as well.
So just following up from that, Annette, did you want to ask something? Say something?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to follow up with what Ryan said. He said some of them are good and some of them aren't. I think that goes for anything, and it's part of just doing your research ahead of time and before you need it, and just knowing what is a good fit for your family.
So on that, Annette, Ryan, or Nancy, if we were looking at a group home, how do we, as an attendee in need for a loved one, how do we find a good group home? What process would you recommend as professionals? How do I sift out the good from the bad?
So I'll just poke in here real quick. I think I always say use your resources. Referrals are absolutely the best way to go. Talk to your hospice nurses, talk to your home health nurses, your PT, whoever is out there in your network. Talk to me, talk to Annette, anybody that you can use as a resource that can give you a really solid recommendation. Because there's ones that I absolutely do not refer to. And I'll tell you, I'll be really honest with you and say, this one is not great. There's problems with care. There's problems with, feeding them, bologna and cheese sandwiches every single day for, 30 days straight. I don't think that that's right. I think that they should mix it up and get some healthier food mixed in there. So, it's just little stuff like that, that we can use our resources to really kind of drill down and figure out exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, there's not a really good website that has group homes here yet. I think that there's probably going to be one coming. So it's not like you can just Google group homes in Reno, because you're just going to find everything else besides group homes. But yeah, I think on that one, it's all about a referral base on that.
Thank you, Ryan. And
You know, we do have a resource guide that does have a list of group homes on it. It is not all encompassing. It's just whomever of the group homes asked to be on the list. But I do agree with Ryan. So, you know, if you want the resource guide, we'd be more than happy to provide that. But then also talking to people like us and Ryan and just seeing what their experience is with those group homes.
And that's part of why we do the Retired Living Truth series, is to bring in reputable people that we trust, like Ryan and Nancy and communities. So yeah, please, anyone on the call today, reach out to any of our sponsors. They're going to connect you to reputable companies. If you call Ryan, he's, as he just said, he'll tell you the ones to consider and maybe ones to stay away from. And so will any of our sponsors. I'm sure if we called Clearwater at Ranchera and spoke to Stacy and Suzanne over there and were asking, we don't think we can afford your community that has assisted living memory support, but could you tell me some group homes? I know the guys, ladies over there have been doing this a long time. They know, just like Ryan and Annette, you know, who to go to. So please use the resources, the sponsors that we have as part of the Retired Living Truth series if you need help, no matter what it is. I know the people that we have, that we all work together to make sure that people are being, you know, taken care of. So,
May I add
anything, Nancy? Yeah, you wanted to add to that?
Thank you. I'd like that you also should look at your own network, because if you are involved in a support group, you have other friends that you know or colleagues, and were they happy or not. Word of mouth is really important. And then just, you know, as an expert in longevity, I'll say that I would look at basically diet, as Ryan said, is very important to keep the brain active and functioning at the highest level, eating good food that feeds the brain. Also, engagement, life engagement and enrichment. What type of activities do they have? What are they doing? They're playing bingo every day, 4 times a day? Or are there other things that are stimulating that continue lifelong learning and interest that keep that brain active and going at its highest potential as long as possible? It's not like the person ever stops learning because of dementia. They basically continue with their brain, those neurons are firing with engaging activities like music. We all know that music really feeds the brain. That's important. And having their own playlist and having their headset and having musical programs that aren't that expensive, or bringing in a music therapist. All of these programs are really important to keep the person functioning at their highest level possible for the highest quality of life.
Thank you, Nancy. That's what it's all about. Yeah, that highest quality of life, whatever that looks like for each person. Yeah, so thank you. And then it'd be remiss of me, we have lots of great resources in the community. The Sanford Center for Aging at University of Nevada, Reno. There's experts there all about dementia. That's what they focus on. So it's another great resource, as is the Alzheimer's Association. So yeah, just reach out and get plugged in if you need help. So I just wanted to go back so it's clear for everybody what the different living options are and the support available as we maybe go through different levels of dementia. So we talked about staying at home was one option and bringing in help, supplemented by adult daycare and so forth, as it makes sense. So what's the next step from there? I can't stay in my home. I do need to go somewhere. What are the next living options that are available? So we mentioned group home. What else?
Going to independent living and then having Ryan help out as needed there, or going to assisted living and then memory care.
Okay, so just go through those slowly. So independent living, I move to a community or a group home as appropriate. Mm-hmm. And then I could do that with my spouse, and I could have Ryan come in the independent living setting where the community doesn't provide that kind of support, but Ryan or any other similar in-home care could provide support. And then you mentioned, so the next one then would be assisted living, Annette?
Yes.
And so what does that look like? How's that different to independent with someone dealing with memory issues? Who would like to take that?
I'm going to pass that on to Nancy.
Okay.
Okay. Well, assisted living has a range of services with individuals that need as little or as much service as they need, called activities of daily living. I see questions come in about long-term care insurance, and you know, many older adults do have long-term care insurance policies, and they do pay listed on how many ADLs they have, how many activities of daily living, they need. And so my own father-in-law wasn't doing well in his own home, and we brought in home care for quite a while. And then he moved to assisted living where his long-term care insurance policy did pick up. So everyone should look deep and look and see if they have one of those policies, what it pays for. It pays for any type of services that are out there, including Ryan's services. And that assisted living provides independence and engaging environment as long as a person can live independently and are not at risk of themselves or others. Then they would go to a memory support system. Sometimes it's better for individuals to go earlier because they know that something's going on and they don't feel like they fit in. Many times I see people get ostracized in a setting that, you know, it's just not good for them to be in the environment if they can't keep up with the activities they have, or the art class or the bingo, what have you. And so they can move into the memory support system where they have a very engaging environment, because that's what it's set up to be, to keep people's brain active as long as possible in both settings. So those are all options for individuals. Again, there's no trigger point when a person would move exactly, unless they are becoming a wander risk and may leave the environment unsafely or not safe to themselves or others. But it just depends. It's taken one by one, again, as to what is best for that person and where they will thrive.
Great explanation, thank you. So you touched on a couple of things there that people, our attendees, might be wondering about. So long-term care insurance, Medicaid, can we just clarify, do those apply first, say, for an independent living community? Can I use Medicaid or long-term care insurance?
No.
No. Assisted living?
Very Medicaid, yeah, and definitely long-term care insurance. Like usually it's 2 out of 6 ADLs that'll qualify you, or a dementia diagnosis.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really important to know, that any kind of cognitive issue will qualify you, even if you can't, you know, if you're fine with ADL performance, cognitive issues will qualify you in almost every single policy that I've ever reviewed.
And I know, Ryan, you're happy for anyone who needs help reviewing their policy. I know you've done that for many, many people. So that's a great resource.
Definitely kind of my niche.
Yes, most certainly. And then what about memory support, memory care communities? Yep. Does Medicaid, long-term care insurance help there at all?
It's Medicaid is not going to, it's not going to be a blanket. So when we say Medicaid covers it, it doesn't cover every single community. You couldn't go, I don't think Clearwater would, I don't think you could go to Clearwater on Medicaid. But there are definitely places in town that Medicaid will cover. Oftentimes not the better places, unfortunately, but long-term care insurance will definitely cover memory care in almost every single situation, unless it's just a very singular policy where it will only cover like a nursing home. You know, and that's just every insurance policy is different, so we would need to look at that. But yeah, always happy to review policies for anybody out there.
Thanks, Ryan. And then group homes, just so I think you answered it, but I think I missed it. Medicaid and long-term care insurance, will that help in a group home?
Again, Medicaid's not going to blanket it's not going to be a blanket, but it will cover certain group homes. And then long-term care insurance most of the time will, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And did I leave anything out there that people should know?
I'm sorry, adult daycare. There are certain adult daycares that'll take both Medicaid, VA, and long-term care insurance. So,
okay, so VA is another possibility for help as well. Okay.
Yeah, VA can also cover our types of services. They can also help cover assisted living, memory care, all that stuff, and that's the aid and attendance policy that we've discussed, I think, before with Rich Scholes and all those guys.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, and we have some recordings there as far as paying for a retired living, where we cover veterans, aid and attendance, and so forth. So those recordings we can certainly make available from past seminars. And then, so my next question, I just want to move on, is there an advantage or disadvantage of waiting too long in terms of making a move, or needing to make multiple moves, going from home to independent to assisted to memory care? What advice, and it's probably different for everybody, maybe Nancy, do you have any feedback for people there?
You don't want to make too many moves, Brett. I mean, you really want that person to feel settled every time they make a move. It will be disruptive, just like for us. it's disruptive when you move. So I think that the advanced planning again and trying to limit the moves or finding a place where you think they can stay for quite a while or till they're on hospice or the end of their life is really important, that they have services that would come in. So in the home, you can still have hospice come in, Ryan's work, and same with assisted living or memory support. So really looking for that full continuum is important.
Annette, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because we often have people.
Yeah, I agree. You need to really limit, because moving is stressful. It's stressful for any age. And when you add dementia in that and not really understanding what's happening and why this is happening, it is much better to do it. The fewer moves, the better. Finding some place that they can be there for long term and get more comfortable and just focus on engaging things instead of engaging in stressful moves.
And Annette, on that, do you have any advice? Because we often work with people who are in large homes and we're helping them move to a smaller home. Why is that? Whether they have memory issues or not, where does that kind of play into this for people trying to work out, do I stay in my large home or do I need to get into something smaller?
A lot of it just has to do with having to take care of the home and the yard, all the maintenance of it. It can be quite exhausting. And as you age, you are not able to do as much as you were able to do when you were younger. So making those decisions on just a smaller space can really help ease the stress. And it's amazing the number of people we've talked to that have just said it's just lifted a weight off their shoulders. They don't have to think about not only their own care, but then also the house and the maintenance of it and who's going to do what, because they can't physically do it themselves. So a lot of people end up contacting us just to discuss options as far as making the space smaller so there's less to deal with.
And then how would you contrast to that for someone who's been proactive and done that earlier on, whether it was with dementia or not, versus a family unit that's waited much later, just in terms of the outcomes that you've seen?
So it goes back to what Nancy was saying, is making a decision in a crisis is you can make decisions that aren't the best for everyone. So planning ahead, having everybody on board, and then as your loved one is dealing with dementia, you can say, remember, we talked about this before, this is what we had decided, so you're doing it together, something that they had decided previously that they wanted to have happen if they needed it, is much better than waiting until people need to step in and make the decision for them. We've had people, they're just very angry. They're mad at their family members, they're mad at the situation. They're not able to acclimate to their new situation because they're just so angry at having to move, being forced to move instead of making the decision themselves. So it just eases the stress, not only of the individual, but of the family, just knowing what to do next when the time arises. So just planning ahead for those what ifs.
Nancy, Ryan, did you have anything you wanted to add from all of the experiences you've had helping people?
I think, my favorite phrase is nobody said, I wish I would have waited. That's honestly one of the things that I've even had them in my TV commercials at times. Be prepared, like those two said, be prepared and make a decision that is not under duress is so key to success, because like everybody just gets angry. The kids get angry at their parents, the parents get angry at their kids, or spouses get angry at each other. I mean, I've lived it and it's not fun. So, bad things happen when you have to make decisions quickly.
And I think the person wants to make decisions for themselves, even regardless of their diagnosis, whatever their diagnosis is. We all want to be self-directed and make decisions for ourselves. And so being proactive, having those uncomfortable conversations are important to do up front so that we can have our wishes honored by our family members.
So I hear from all of you, it's much easier for everyone involved making those decisions earlier in the process than waiting till later when perhaps we're not in a position to process that information and make a well-informed decision. Yeah. Okay, so Nancy, I just wanted to jump to you and ask, how do we go about having a conversation with a family member that maybe has cognitive decline? How do we bring this even up? Because, you know, lots of people's like, you know, maybe you're in denial, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, I don't want to talk about it. Well, and some of us aren't even willing to even start the conversation. So what advice, resources, suggestions would you have for people?
Well, I like to say that the island of denial is a nice place to live. And I like living on Hawaii, but at some point you have to come off the island. And that island is very powerful, and it holds you back. It holds people back because they don't really want to see the changes in their spouse or their parent or their sibling or friend or whomever. And, you know, they've been a partner with this person for a long time, so it's easy to cover up for each other. But it's also important, as the people make their own decisions focused on aging and longevity, that you talk about it. What if this happens to me? What would we do? How do we move forward in this? I think that's important. And families don't want to talk about it, but we all have a right to know our diagnosis. Sometimes I see families that say, don't tell them, don't say the D word, the, you know, dementia word, because that is very upsetting. And so we honor that. However, everyone usually wants to know what's wrong with them. And so being upfront and honest and planning again is important. And coming through the denial is a difficult process, very difficult. And just the more we talk about it, the easier it is to come off that island of denial.
Great advice.
You know, one of the things that has helped families is they often will call us and we just sit down and have a conversation with the family and just talk about options. And even with the family member that has the dementia, we definitely want them included in the whole process. And it takes time. So it's not one conversation, it's multiple conversations over time. And it's just talking about options and what's out there.
Great point, Annette. And so Nancy, you'd mentioned about, you know, cognitive screenings as we age and get to a certain point. That's part of our regular checkups with our primary care physician, if I understood that correctly. And so for those people who don't go and get regular checkups, what would you suggest? Is that an important part? I would think so. What would you?
It really is. I mean, the Alzheimer's Association has had out their 10 warning signs on their website for a long time. And I like to joke to say, if we all read those 10 warning signs today, we'd have at least one of them going on right now with us. Like, wait, where am I? What hotel room did I wake up on today? So that's important that we really look at that. Those 10 warning signs are real. They show signs that someone isn't functioning at their highest cognitive level. And so be aware of that and be mindful of that. They're time tested, and I really like to rely on that as a first go-to.
And then Nancy, while I have you talking, so sometimes we've encountered that there are people who are on like lots of medications, think that they are, or a loved one thinks they have dementia of some form. It hasn't been diagnosed, and they're just making that assumption. But could you just touch on medications and how that could perhaps be giving us false information in terms of us?
Absolutely, because delirium from over-medication is very common in older adults. They're taking supplements, they're taking whatever their different doctors have prescribed. And we find in assisted living, we use a threshold of 7 medications and below is normal. That's a lot of medication to be taking. But some people I see are upwards of 10, 15. I'm sure Ryan sees a lot all the time. And that can cause delirium and pseudo-dementia, signs of dementia. And so again, looking at all of those signs, seeing your doctor regularly. Now through telehealth, you can see people more often. You can see your physician if you don't want to go in. And we are able to really monitor any kind of changes. People might get lost going a familiar place. People are misplacing things. People have agnosia. They're not misnaming objects, or aphasia, they can't get their words out correctly. There's so many signs that are there, and there's so many resources online between the Alzheimer's Association and the Alzheimer's AFA, Alzheimer's Family Foundation of America. They have lots of great resources, and webinars are out there. And then your local professionals like the Sanford Center on Aging is an excellent source, and really nationally recognized as one of the best places to go to get some help.
Thanks, Nancy. And I'm glad you brought up Sanford Center for Aging again, because they have a wonderful medication program there where a pharmacist will sit down and review all the medications, knowing what some of the potential interactions are between all of these medications. And as you said, how many are potentially too many, so that a family can go back and have a more intelligent conversation, with their care providers in terms of, do I need to be on all of these based on, the interactions and so forth. So I know Annette and I, and I'm sure you guys have referred multiple people to them, and they're great up there. So just,
Action.
go on?
Brad, I was just say, read the description. Sometimes it will show in the drug medication, what are the side effects? So when you get a prescription, those are listening, read the paper that comes to the pharmacist for what are the side effects to that medication, so that you're aware of it yourself.
Great point. Thank you, Nancy. So the next question I just had for each of you is, obviously we're all dealing with this pandemic in some way or not. And, there's not a whole lot of good. It's, we'd all wish it was behind us. But are there any good things that each of you as professionals who have seen come out of this that has caused us to change? Like, one thing I'm excited about is how many people are on the call today. It looks like we're almost near 100 individuals watching this today. And I know at the beginning of the pandemic, trying to get everyone on using technology was a challenge because it was all new to us. So I see that as a positive. We now have another way to maybe not socialize, but to get information and interact. But what have the three of you seen as any positive things that have come out of this? I'll start with you, Nancy.
Okay, I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to give Ryan a chance in that. So I think one of the things is people are really getting their pulse together, their advanced directives, thinking about what if something happens to them, even if they contract COVID, what would happen with their family, getting their finances in order. I see some positive things happening, that those conversations we don't really want to have, those uncomfortable conversations are coming up more often, so that we can plan for the future, especially if someone has comorbidities and chronic health conditions, because they know that they are at risk for the virus and they want to be prepared for that. So I see that as a positive thing, that people are reaching out using technology to get more information, to be self-directed.
Great. Annette?
Yeah, I see as a positive, actually, the same thing. People are getting out and seeking out more information. You can see a lot of it online, but then also reaching out to us. We've had more consultations with people, just talking about different options and planning ahead. Maybe not doing something right now, but planning maybe in a year or 2 years, just making those plans, which I think is fantastic. I think that's what we want to see more of, just planning ahead.
Great. Thanks, Annette. Ryan?
So two things. I think people are spending a lot more positive time with their families, which I know I have. I've never spent this much time with my kids and, my wife as I have since this all started. And then the other really cool thing that I've seen, and Brett, as you've ridden with me on the mountain bike and stuff, or even just walking my dogs this morning, so many people out exercising and being outdoors and enjoying, what our wonderful town has to offer. So that's been really good. Unless it's bad for me on the mountain bike because I have to dodge hikers all the time, but it's been really positive in those two ways, I think. Families are getting to know their kids better, and a lot of times there's kids having their parents move in with them because they don't want to send them to assisted living, and that can cause both good and bad things. But I think overall it's been a positive for in those two regards.
Right. There is good in all of this. So I just wanted to go back. We've mentioned lots of resources. I'd just like each of you just to name off one resource that people on the call should be aware of. And I'm just going to put up a slide where we did put together some of the resources. But start with you, Ryan. Just give us a resource that people should be aware of in the community who might be dealing with dementia.
Well, I'd always start with either Sanford Center is a really good one, or Alzheimer's Association. Sorry, that's two. Nancy, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. Sorry.
It's okay. I again think that there's a lot of good online. There's also chat groups for families, or you can Google that and go in to look at other families that are dealing with the same thing across the country. One group that I'm involved with is called the Dementia Action Alliance. daanow.org, and they're a group of professionals and people living with the diagnosis of dementia that have chat groups, as well as the Alzheimer's Association has groups that people can get on and talk to others and really share their experiences and not feel so alone. So the online world is booming, and there's a lot of groups out there. Just be careful, make sure I always think we need to make sure it's evidence-based, that they're sharing information that we know is based on science. And if they're giving any specific medical information or anything about medications, definitely. And then physicians groups sometimes have groups for a healthy lifestyle and online through universities. So there's another option. And all of your local resources, your aging professionals and care managers as well, are great resources in your area.
Thank you, Nancy.
And one thing that we did, we put on our website, actually, JanelleGroup.com, we listed off all the communities. So independent, assisted, memory care, and we did put a map together so you can see where they're located and all their contact information. So that you can, if you're looking for something that's close to where you currently live, you can go onto the map and just click on it and get the contact information and reach out to those communities that interest you.
Great, thank you all. And then I put up a slide. One of the ones that we didn't just touch on then I want to mention is dementia-friendly Washoe County. So we have a great resource here, and that they arrange all sorts of different social activities and things with people, families struggling with dementia. They do, the walk for dementia. So they have lots of different things as well, and that's worth checking out. And the website is on there. And then Nancy had kind of touched on the warning signs of dementia. So the Alzheimer's Association on their website, or they have the brochures. I have the one up on the screen. What the warning signs are, the top 10 warning signs. So it's another great resource as well. And I guess we didn't mention it with the Alzheimer's Association. They also have a 24-hour hotline. So if you're struggling in some way, or someone you care about is, and you just need information and resources, again, they have a 24/7 1-800 number you can call, and they'll help put you in contact with whatever it is you need. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And then, of course, locally, they have lots of support groups as well. And I think Nancy kind of touched on that. So those are two great places to start. So I think I'd like to open it up to audience questions and answers. If I can, oops. Oh, actually, before we do. So yeah, we have some more upcoming events. So for those on the call who had previously asked about doing in-person tours of our communities, we had a sign-up list, and we had 60, 70 people who would like to tour the communities, and we were trying to do that earlier in the year, and then the pandemic hit, and we had to put that all on hold. And obviously we have no idea when we can do tours again back in the communities physically, because of they're being very conscious about their residents and so forth. We thought we would do some virtual tours. So we would actually have a community on a call like this, taking us through and touring us through the community and telling us all about it. It's kind of an interim until we can actually get on a bus again and have fun and go to the communities and have lunch together and so forth. So our first tour that we're going to be doing is going to be with Clearwater at Ranchero that we've spoken about today, which is a senior community that provides assisted living and memory support services. And we're going to do that on August the 27th. So I'm just going to put up a poll here, actually. If you are interested in being on that call, it'll be probably not a Zoom webinar. We'll probably do it as a meeting, a Zoom meeting, if anyone's been on the Zoom meeting. So it's a little bit more interactive and we can see each other. Hopefully we won't have too many people on it, but a good number. So let me just put up a poll. So, and if anyone is called in, I see we have a couple of people called in via phone. If you would like to participate, just give us a call after this and we'll get you on the list and reach out to you. So I've put that one up. And then on September the 8th, we have our regular seminar. It's actually on a Tuesday next month, not on our regular Thursday, a Tuesday due to some conflicts. And it's the truth about going from we to me. So how do we prepare ourselves as we as a couple, knowing inevitably there's going to be one of us? So what are the things we can do as a couple now to prepare to help, our surviving spouse? And then if we are recently a surviving spouse, what are the resources and so forth available? So we're going to go into a lot of detail about how to put ourselves in the best position possible. And then on October the 8th, we have the truth about finding untapped resources. We have so many great resources here in the community that many people just aren't even aware of. So we're going to go through and talk about what are some of the resources people should know, covering a whole gamut of different services and things that are available in our community. So if you'd like to participate in any of those, just click the button and then we'll get you registered for that. And if for some reason, due to technology challenges or whatever the case may be, feel free to go to our website, retiredlivingtrueseries.com, and sign up there, or just simply give us a call and we'd be more than happy to get you registered. So I'll just leave that up for a moment. And so let's jump into questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button. And if you're calling in from a phone listening, you can press *9. And I'm going to jump to our first one here, which is Shelley. I'm going to unmute you, Shelley. So Shelley, you're unmuted. You just need to accept that on your screen, and please go ahead and ask your question of our panelists. So on your screen, Shelley, it should be just popping up, accept the unmute. So you just need to acknowledge that on your screen, and then you'll be able to speak and be heard. Well, while Shelley's just working that out, I'm going to jump down to our next person, which is Regina. Regina, feel free to go ahead and ask your question. Again, just need to accept the unmute on your device.
Yes, I would like to know if you have when we ask you about a particular place, would you have the demographics of the people who live there, the races?
So who would like to take that? Would the communities have information or be able to share information on, the ages of residents, the ethnicity of residents, and so forth, to give someone more of a feel of what that looks like in terms of the residents?
I'm sure the communities have all that information. I don't, but I would assume the community would. I don't know about any sort of race or anything like that. I don't know if they keep that stuff, but I would imagine so.
I would say yes, they have that information, Regina. They may not give you, it's obviously private, but they can give you generalities of other people that are, for instance, I have a community that has a large Asian American population, and they have special diet community that they have for those that they really want, certain types of food, and so they can accommodate that. So it's definitely a very fair question to anytime you tour a community to ask them that, and they'll just be general. They can't tell you we have, exactly how many for privacy reasons, but they can certainly give you a percentage.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Annette, based on your tours we've done?
No, it's basically the same thing. There's a lot of times we just ask about the demographics. Oftentimes it's more along the lines of how many men are there compared to women, how many couples. They'll be able to give you all of that information, but yeah, I don't know. They're usually definitely more general. I've never had them be specific with me.
Percentages, 63.4%.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Regina, another great way is actually just doing a tour of a community and just observing, going at lunchtime, the communities will happily host you there for lunch, and you'll kind of get a good feel for each community just by observing. I think is always great advice to just go visit the communities. And if you're able to join us on the call, so what we've arranged, we mentioned our first call with Clearwater at Ranchera, our assisted living memory community. Each month, we're going to feature a community where we do a virtual tour with that community. So our first one is going to be Clearwater, and we're going to do one with Cascades, Promenade on the River, Revel Ranchera. So we'll work our way through the different communities so you can kind of get a feel and ask different questions, because they're all different in many different ways. And yeah, it's good to learn what the differences are and why one might appeal to you more than another. And they're all great communities. So I just encourage everybody to jump on those calls if it makes sense for you. Great learning opportunity. So our next question, let me just go back and mute. So we have some questions here typed in. So feel free to put your hand up if you have a question and I'll jump to you. And so this question from Terry: should a person who is healthy, active, cognitively intact go to the Sanford Centre now, or is it a place for someone who is experiencing some difficulty with their daily living? Who would be able to take that question?
By Nancy, huh?
That's what I was thinking. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. So I'm sure that Dr. Reed who runs the center, Peter Reed, would talk to anyone. He worked for the National Alzheimer's Association. He's been in Congress testifying for how important it is that we look at proactively with people with potential diagnosis. I think if that person you're speaking of may have it in their family and a first-degree relative, they'd be more likely to be seen. If they're not showing any signs or symptoms, then it's not picked up. But if it's something's picked up on the Medicare screening for cognitive issues, then yes, you should be able to go. I mean, just like anything in healthcare, they're busy and they like to look at folks that really are in need at this point. So I think being proactive, watching yourself in any changes that may happen, and having their family just be mindful of that. There's so much fear around a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis. So a lot of people think, oh, I must be getting it, and maybe they're just really stressed out. So you want to look through that and make sure if you had some of those warning signs, as well as maybe a first-degree relative with a dementia diagnosis, then you're more likely to be seen.
And on that, Nancy, someone else had asked about what are some of the warning signs. So could you just rattle off just some of them, the ones that are most obvious that people should be aware of?
Misplacing objects. I mean, I misplaced my keys. So, you know, like I said, we might all have some signs of this. Disorientation to time and place, getting lost, going to familiar places. Those are the most common ones. And then not naming words when we see a sign is where people might use a word that sounds like another word. So naming of nouns is another one. That's not specifically on the 10 warning signs, but people know changes in the syntax and in their language that might show some issues with their cognitive function. But those are the most common when people are lost, or you don't usually see disorientation to time and place in early stages. But it can show up on occasion depending on all the other things that might be going on with that person at that time.
And when you say misstating nouns, was it? Can you just elaborate on that?
One of the things we say early on is that, you know, naming nouns, something that sounds like something else, it's not actually the right word. Or, you know, we're like, oh, what's the name of that actor? You know, you have to think about it. That's normal senescence and aging. But, you know, using the wrong words or sign, or agnosia, misplacing this pen, maybe this pen is my lipstick. These are signs that families really start to see as big warning signs, and they're further into the disease process when that happens. But the 10 warning signs online, you can pull it and look at it. But I tell families not to get too stressed out about that. Just look at the whole picture. Look at everything that's going on in that person's life. Look at their medication, as we mentioned before, and really look at what is happening with that person. It's a slow, insidious process. It's a progression that is slow. And if it comes on really fast, then that's probably delirium from medication.
Thanks, Nancy.
Or illness, yeah.
So we have a question from Robert. Robert, I'm going to unmute you. And again, if you can just acknowledge that on your screen, then go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I'd like to know if there are any of all the types of facilities that you've mentioned that allow pets.
Great question.
Yeah, I think most, if not all of them, do.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Robert. That's a great question. We get that a lot. So yeah, typically the communities do welcome pets. And as Nancy said, that's a great way to, for anybody being engaged with a pet. I know a couple of communities have actually brought in community pets that residents just love and taken care of, and even adopting as their own to look after. And yeah, dogs taking on walks and so forth. So. And Regina, I don't know if you still have your hand up. I didn't put your hand down. Let me just unmute you if you had a follow-up question. Did you have a follow-up question, Regina?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, no, you're fine. I should have lowered your hand. That's my mistake. So thank you. And then we had a question here from Ken. Maybe we've answered this. Are the typical or frequent warning signs that you talked about, Nancy, that a person may be ready for a diagnosis or treatment planning? So what do? We look at those warning signs. We've got, 4 out of 10 of them. What do we do now? Who do we go see?
I think it's important to see your physician. And again, if you're over 65, your yearly checkup will have that cognitive screening. And sometimes the spouse has to say, I've noticed something going on with my husband, to the doctor in advance. Could you please do a screening? It is reimbursed by Medicare, so they usually are doing it, but sometimes they're in a rush, so you don't know. But I think looking at that without labeling someone with the scarlet letter of D, if you will, for dementia, but really looking at that and getting all the facts and the science and the research behind it is important, and the physician is the best course of action. Most people see a primary physician. If you see more issues going on, you should definitely see a neurologist.
Right. And would that be a good time maybe to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association just to learn more and become educated and maybe know about support groups?
Absolutely. I mean, you have quite a network through the Sanford Center and up there that reaches out to so many places throughout Nevada. And also the Alzheimer's Association is, 24-hour hotline, can answer any question, has support groups, are just a wealth of knowledge to help you there in your community.
And then just to follow up, when would you suggest someone would want to then go and start visiting communities to learn more about what they offer? At that point of being diagnosed, do I go visit assisted living, memory care, independent living, just to find out more and educate myself about resources? Or
I think it's, as Ryan had mentioned too, it's just really looking and being proactive in advance of what options will fit best with your family. I think visiting doesn't hurt, so if there is a crisis or something happens, you have 2 or 3 places in mind. And looking at the place that fits your lifestyle the best, and with other people that live there that you would want to hang out with, if you will. And knowing in advance what those options are the most important thing, especially to share with your adult children.
okay, great. Ryan, Annette, did you have anything you wanted to add before I jump to the next question?
Nope.
So the next question kind of fits into that a little bit, and I know we've touched on it, discussing long-term care insurance as it works for people who have dementia. Is there anything we didn't cover specific to that question?
No, I kind of used my response from several questions ago to kind of address that a little bit. It's either you qualify with ADLs or you qualify with a cognitive diagnosis. And if and when that time comes, if you have a diagnosis from a doctor or a gerontologist or any sort of advanced type thing, it's always good to have that as backup, because the long-term care insurance company is going to send a nurse out to do an assessment no matter what, and they're going to be looking for to do a test if there's cognitive or if they need help with ADLs. And if you just have that backup ammunition with a doctor's diagnosis, it just helps that process so much better.
Good information. And just Ryan, so do most long-term care insurance policies cover cognitive? Is that a general?
Yeah. It's one of the two. You have to have, you need assistance to ADLs or cognitive. I've never seen one that hasn't, and I've probably looked at 1,000 of these policies over my years, and I know you guys are questioning my existence, but I've never seen one that doesn't cover either ADLs or a cognitive diagnosis.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And then another question we had from Lois. So maybe we've answered this. A range of care options exist for someone with increasing dementia, such as Clearwater, and home care with someone like you, Ryan, with Amada. What other options are there? So I think we went through all of the options.
Yeah,
are there any we missed?
I don't think so. I think we went through everything.
Oh, Annette's saying the screen shows my desktop. Okay, thank you, Annette.
I think, Ryan, you did a great job talking about adult day services. It really helps families for a long time to stay at home with a kind of a mix of intermittent services that help them before it's time to find placement somewhere.
Could you say that first part again, Nancy? I dropped out for me for some reason.
I said, as Brian did a great job talking about the adult day services and any senior clubs or whatever in the community that can help people as well with intermittent services to stay at home and support the care partner.
Thank you. I'm sure Ryan appreciated hearing a compliment twice. Wonderful. So I'm just looking to see, do we have any more questions? I think we've got our way through all the questions. So I'm 11:20. So if anyone has any last questions, now would be the time to ask. Just put up your hand and I'll happily unmute you.
Hey,
And
Brett,
I'll give people a moment to do that. Yes, Annette.
I do have a question. Maybe Ryan can answer this. I'm just curious as to the cost. How much does it cost for like your services, and then also to do adult daycare? Because you said adult daycare is a way to complement what you're doing and can be less expensive.
Yeah, so usually adult daycare is a daily, it's a daily cost versus our services, which are hourly. I've seen dailies range anywhere between $40 and $100, depending on the care needs at community, like adult daycare. We range between $28 and $30 per hour. So that if that, gives you a frame of reference, we do have minimums. We have to be there 4 hours a shift, 3 days a week, which shakes out to about $1,300 a month. That would be our bare minimum that we can do. So if you have, long-term care insurance, or you're a veteran or something like that, we can always try to find the best bang for the buck, so to speak, and really help with costs. We always, do our best to try to help people with financial constraints and stuff like that.
And then my next question is, again to you, Ryan, is because of COVID, you have your staff going in between homes. What are some things that you're doing to help with that as far as exposure?
Yeah, so we actually try to minimize that, and we're in a pretty fortunate position where a lot of our shifts are 8 hours plus anyway, and so they're only going to an 8-hour shift per day, and we're not cross-pollinating, in other words. But every single time our caregivers clock in and every single time our caregivers clock out, they're asked a series of questions. Are you symptomatic? Do you feel like you have a fever? Have you been exposed in any way? Did any of your family members? They go through that every single time they clock in and out. And I'm very happy to say that we've only had one case in my entire staff of, almost 200 caregivers. We've only had one case, and it was a gal that was taking care of a lady who was in a community who had contracted COVID from the community and then gave it to our caregiver. So that's been the only exposure that we've had to it. We're doing everything we can. Unfortunately, with having, as large of a staff as we have and logistically spread out all over the place, we can't go and scan temperatures every single shift. I mean, it's not even remotely possible. So we do what we can with our software, and, they clock in and out through an app, and that app asks them the same series of questions every time. And then if anybody is any remotely symptomatic, we pull them and quarantine them right away, and get tested. We get them tested, and then we get the patient that we're taking care of tested and make sure that they're okay before we send someone else in.
Great. Thank you, Ryan.
In assisted living, we take temperatures of staff a minimum of twice a day. They have to answer the same questions, and we don't allow staff to work other jobs, especially at Clearwater Ranchera. You can only work one job, and for that particular company. And so that's really helped with this, because this whole pandemic, because it's not really in the home, it's coming into the home. So we've really been very careful. And as you know, how sad it is that people can't visit with their family members now, except beyond with plexiglass. And so it's a very interesting time. We're really trying to rewrite the playbook, so to speak, to keep our residents safe, but still engaged in senior housing, and have the highest safety precautions we have recommended by the CDC.
Well, thank you all. I think that's a great spot to end our call on. But just before we do any of you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share with the audience before we just wrap up?
Plan ahead.
Plan ahead.
Use your resources.
Do your research. Yeah. Resources. Yes.
I think that's great advice, both of those. They were common themes. Plan ahead and use your resources. Yeah. Don't be afraid to reach out and get help for you or someone else. Well, I'd just like to, on behalf of all of our attendees, just thank the three of you so much for being here today. normally everyone would applaud, so I know they're at home applauding for you for the great information you've shared. And we look forward to seeing everyone at our seminar or webinar next month. Some people have asked, when are we going to be back in a physical location? I know there's lots of people who would rather do this and stay, feel safer. And then there's another 50%, I think the poll was, that would like to be back. We're definitely doing it online for next month for September. And then depending on where we are, we evaluate every month whether it would make sense to be back. So maybe there's a slight chance in October. The good news is we have our venue secured for the 12 months of next year. We locked in earlier this week our monthly seminars in person if we're able to. So we'll just keep everyone informed as we know more as we go along. So thanks so much for everybody for being on the webinar today. We miss seeing you all in person. Can't wait to see you all again, and hopefully see you again next month. And thank you so much, Nancy, Ryan, and Annette for
having us
with me today.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
You guys as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.